Hi, everybody. I'm Andrea Amador. I want to welcome you to my Substack, Loving the Skin You're In. And I'm here today with Wendy Gordon. She is here to share how to protect yourself from toxic beliefs. And just to give you a little bit of to touch base and let you know, I want to tell you just a little bit about me, my Substack, and then Wendy can go ahead and share hers. It is all about self-love and loving yourself and recognizing that you are worthy no matter what you look like, no matter anything. Your past does not determine your present, and you are not a victim of your circumstances. Things happen for you, not to you. So I wanted to welcome Wendy because she's here to share a very pivotal experience of her disconnection or her having to leave her church. She was a reverend, and because of toxic beliefs, and that was her way of protecting herself. So take it away, Wendy.
Thank you, and thanks to everyone who's joining us now or will watch the replay. So my Substack is Changing Lives, and I started it because of all the dramatic changes in my life and what I learned from them, and wanted to help other people who are struggling. So as she mentioned, I was a pastor. My husband and I were actually co-pastors of a church until 2020. And the church council abruptly told us that they wanted us to resign immediately. And we had not had any discussions about that, and they refused to give us a reason. But the only thing we had ever really disagreed about was Trump's family separation policy at the border, and whether or not to follow CDC safety guidelines for COVID.
Right.
So that's our best guess of what happened. And then we each interviewed together and separately with other churches. And I quickly realized that my progressive, inclusive spiritual views, especially about treating all people well and helping the needy, which
Yes.
are basic teachings of Jesus, but nevertheless, especially when it came to immigrants and the members of the LGBTQ community, many church members did not share my love for them or my opinion that there were obvious contradictions between following Trump and following Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So I left that career and began my freelance writing career, which then led to mental and spiritual health coaching and leading spiritual support Zoom groups for people of all faiths or none. But the kind of time in between the two careers,
I wanted to ask you about that.
Severe depression.
Yes.
That
Yes.
almost killed me.
Yes.
And also made me realize that my self-esteem was completely achievement-based and dependent on approval from other people.
Mm-hmm.
So as I eventually, a year later, came out of that depression and continued therapy and so forth, and journaled and wrote affirmations and did all the things, I began to truly love myself and recognize that my worth was not dependent on other people's approval, and I was going to stand up for what I believed in and speak my truth. And if other people didn't like it, it really wasn't my problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I no longer had to worry about, am I going to lose my job if I say something people don't like? So it's been very freeing. And of course, self-love is an ongoing journey. So I don't claim to be like fully enlightened, recovered, whatever.
Right.
But I just share what has helped me, the resources, the practices, the books I've read by experts, my connections with peers and their experiences. I'm now a NAMI trained peer recovery support group facilitator too.
Wow.
So I have a lot of mental health knowledge, mostly from personal experience, learned the hard way, but also from research.
Yes. Well, one of the biggest questions that I have is, how did you move from either sadness or feeling helpless and blame, perhaps, to saying, okay, that's it, I'm going off on my own, I'm flying, I don't need the church's approval or acceptance?
Well, it was a combination of ways. First, like I said, it wasn't my choice. The church council forced us out.
Yeah.
And then as I interviewed with other churches, there was just no way that I could pretend to agree with the hate, or that especially after January 6th. I mean, the idea that was totally okay and justified, and people were waving Jesus is Lord flags while beating up Capitol Hill police and breaking into the Capitol. Yeah, that was a bridge too far for me, I guess.
I understand.
And also, to be honest, I mean, those churches weren't any more interested in having me as their pastor than I was in being their pastor.
Right.
So,
but if you identified that, I'm assuming that there was a really pivotal experience in your childhood that made you decide, okay, this is the path I'm taking. So how did you move from that identification of, I am a reverend, this is what I do, I help people, to saying, okay, well, I'm moving this to another platform?
Originally, I was just forced into it, like I said.
Understand.
And I just didn't have any other options. I'm in my 50s, and working full time for someone else was always a struggle.
Yes.
Aside from the church work, because of my high ethical standards, I refused to lie to customers, for example. And so I didn't have a lot of options. And mental health wise, I just need the flexibility to set my own schedule and the control over who I work for and what kind of work I do.
Yes.
So my freelance writing career really began because I wrote about politics and religion and how Christian nationalism was not remotely Christian. And I quoted, Jesus' teachings and other Bible verses to explain that, and examples of the harm being done. I live in Texas, so our state government is at least as bad as Trump is, and strongly supports him.
Well, let's take a turn on this and just tell me. I heard that you love Bruce Springsteen's music, and it's really it brings you a lot of joy, a lot of healing. Can you talk about how specifically that worked in your favor during this time?
Sure. So one of my mental health practices is to play his music and sing and dance along. Mm-hmm. So some of his song lyrics are very powerful, especially his song Land of Hope and Dreams. I have been a fan since I was in high school. And the other thing is that being at his live concerts is one of very few places where I am fully in the moment, alive, excited, energized, in communion with thousands of other people.
Yes.
He also has battled depression and written about it in his autobiography, and spoken about it during interviews. And he does a lot of charitable work. So there are many reasons I look up to him as a role model. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I call him the second most important man in my life and influence on my mental health.
Right.
Second only to my husband, who I've been with since 1991.
Wow, that's beautiful. I know one of the posts that you wrote about was really meaningful to me because my late best friend, Maria Elena, she loved butterflies. So I'd like you to share a little bit about how the butterfly's transformation mirrors ours in specific to toxic relationships and changing and moving away from them or doing whatever is needed.
Sure. So butterflies have always been a powerful symbol of of transformation, not just for me, but in the Christian faith and for lots of other people. And so some species of them start out, they hatch from the eggs, and then they are on a milkweed plant as caterpillars, and then they, develop their chrysalis or cocoon, and when they, while they're caterpillars, and after that, they actually eat the milkweed plant.
Wow.
And so what once was their home becomes something that they consume and leave.
They embody it in the grandest way. That's amazing.
Yes, in fact, I was just at a botanical garden yesterday and saw some butterflies, and they had a plaque that I took a photo of that explained the monarch butterfly life cycle in detail. And it was very fascinating to see the photos and read the descriptions of the different stages.
Wow.
Like even just when they're caterpillars, they have like 4 different phases of being a caterpillar where they change in little ways and grow.
What are they? What are those named stages? Okay.
I mean, they're not major changes.
Right.
They're just gradual shifts, growth.
So how does that relate to the transformation that we go through when we recognize that there's something that's toxic in our environment, whether it's a person or a community or situation, whatever it is? How does one move from being in that place to saying, that's it, I'm out?
Well, just like the caterpillar becomes a butterfly and flies away to a new home, I think that we kind of are caterpillars when we're stuck in the beliefs we were raised with, or we're so concerned with pleasing other people and satisfying their expectations that we deny some part of who we are and don't live the life we want to live. We live the life we think we should live, or that other people tell us we have to live.
Yeah.
And as we grow older and or wiser, we realize that being true to ourselves is more important than making other people happy.
Yeah.
And that if we love and trust ourselves, we aren't upset when other people don't love us and reject us.
Yes.
And not to say we aren't upset at all. One of my articles is self-love is a never-ending journey. And so, like I said, it's not like, I never have negative thoughts about myself now and beat myself up. I still have a vicious inner critic.
Sure.
It's just that I also have another part of me that's wiser, that comes back and challenges those overgeneralizations about how I'm a failure and, I don't have my own life in order or working perfectly, so how can I help someone else figure out theirs?
Yes.
So yeah, it's basically letting go of the baggage that weighs us down and the old toxic beliefs, and that enables us to fly like a butterfly and soar and spread our wings and enjoy life.
Yes. I grew up very passionate about my church. Well, at first, my mother would drag me to Sunday school, but then as the years went by, I became a Sunday school teacher, and I was involved in so many different things. And there was a time when I was involved in so many things, and it was way before I learned about boundaries, and I was well into people pleasing, so I was doing too much. And when I was going through my NLP training, I learned about boundaries, and I was told, start cutting back. And I had a conversation with my Girl Scout leader, and I said, okay, sorry, 2 weeks before the season, I have to end it anyway. And she was very understanding. Then I had the same conversation with the youth pastor, and she did not have any understanding whatsoever. She basically said that, who did I think I was, and that I didn't deserve to be in church, and that Jesus wouldn't accept me, and whoa, it actually pushed me away from that church for 4 years. for 4 years. And I loved and adored that church. And now I'm actually back in the neighborhood of that church, and unfortunately it's just about to close in June. But I have a 62-year relationship with that church. So what advice would you give to someone who was in a similar position as mine, where this toxic behavior comes up and it makes you question your value, your worth, your everything about yourself? Like, who am I?
Yes.
My minister's going to say
it
this.
It is a very traumatic
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And disorienting, and that's exactly the kind of thing I do private coaching about, and just have conversations about, and lead support groups for people dealing with that, or who have in the past and their families are still stuck in it and don't understand and think they're going to hell now and all the rest.
Right.
And for some people, the only solution is to leave church and permanently, not just a congregation. And some leave Christianity, and including some former pastors I know. And I totally understand that, because if you've been what I consider spiritually abused, then why would you want to stay in the situation where you're being shamed and being told how horrible you are, and that God doesn't love you, and that in fact the only way to escape hell is to believe that Jesus took the punishment you deserve, and you're just a bad person, you're a sinner, there's all of those things.
Wow.
And it doesn't have to be distorted and used in a shaming, destructive way, but for me, just those beliefs in and of themselves no longer ring true, and they were harmful to me. And so I don't believe that there is a hell, much less that God deliberately sends people God is mad at to suffer there.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't believe that Christianity is the only true religion, or the only way to connect with the divine, or that God is the only correct name for the divine, or any of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. It completely blew me away. And for years, when I was ready to go back to the church, and I had a conversation with the supervisory minister, I had told him, and he said, she left about 3 years ago, and many people had come and said that they had the same experience with her. So, but still, from that moment, my relationship with the church changed, and it became much more of an observer point of view, and no longer like completely inundated.
Right. You weren't enmeshed in the system anymore. You
not
could
at
set
all.
boundaries.
Yes.
And some people are able to do that and stay in churches because the church people support them in other ways, bring meals when they're sick, or there's a death in the family, or are just friends they're not willing to give up, or family members that they want to stay in relationship with. And people deal with it in different ways. Mm-hmm. For me, my husband and I actually do attend a church now of the same denomination that the other congregation was part of, because the denomination as a whole is very progressive, and our church has a wonderful welcome statement that says we welcome people of all gender orientations, sexual or gender identities, sexual orientations, ethnicities, sizes, shapes, cultures, etc.
Yes.
And so we very much admire that. But at the same time, we don't necessarily believe all of the Christian theology. When babies are baptized and they say, we welcome you into God's family. For me, it's like, no, they were always in God's family, and all people are.
It's funny
so
you
things
should
like that. But we go or at least I go mainly for the socialization, and because I admire the social justice work, and a true community with people of diverse backgrounds and sexual orientations and all the rest, that's very important to me.
Yes. It's funny
and
that
I want to support them.
Yeah, it's funny that you had mentioned that about the baptism, because my son was baptized in that church, but we had already moved by that time and my daughter wasn't. And there was a little like niggling thought, oh wow, that's not good. But Kara went on and she did some different training with the minister of the other church, but there was that old little belief, like, oh no, in order to be able to like enter the special whatever, get through the velvet rope, then you have to be baptized. And I actually surprised myself with the traditionalism of my thinking. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's so deeply embedded.
It is.
Just like other harmful beliefs, like I'm not enough, whether or not you were ever raised in a religious environment. Our culture is all about productivity and climbing the ladder and achievement. And so it's hard not to internalize the idea that your worth comes from what you do, how much you earn.
Yes.
I mean, we even use the term net worth.
Yes, we do.
To describe,
That's right.
Our financial state.
That's right. I had another experience after my husband passed away. So many things changed, and I ended up living here in my mother-in-law's home. My sister-in-law welcomed my son and I got to know my sister-in-law on a whole different level. During the 32 years that my husband Angel and I were married, Lourdes was always very quiet and very reserved and to herself. And by the time we came into her life in 2022, it was a very different version of her, because she was nursing both her husband, who had had a stroke, and her mother, my mother-in-law, who had had breast cancer and diabetes and heart problems and so many other things, that she was at her wit's end, my sister-in-law. And I saw her struggling to survive. But to me, the way that looked, coming from an abusive home, is that she was unraveling. She was so angry. She was so, she would curse all the time. And you could see that her jaw would clench, and she'd just be so angry. So I believe that comes from the family's cultural beliefs, that in order to, they were Catholic, in order to be a good Catholic daughter, you had to take care of your husband, you had to take care of your mother and sacrifice your life. And that's what Lourdes did. And unfortunately, 2 months after my mother-in-law passed away, Lourdes died at 67. So it was really important. I wanted you to have an opportunity to speak to that, because there are so many women who struggle with that belief that it's their job, it's their identity to take care of family, because it's a way of like being considered a saint or whatever. And you're speaking to me, because over 40 years, I've taken care of family members, their businesses. So I'm all ears.
Yeah, so I think there are two pieces to that. One is, like you said, it can become your identity. Yeah. So my identity was being a pastor. And when that ended, I was just like, who am I? What value do I have to the world? Why even exist? Basically, I have nothing to offer. But then the second piece is that message from Christianity especially, but I think from our society in general, that appropriate roles for women are to be the nurturers, the caregivers, to sacrifice our needs for others. And I always emphasize that Jesus taught, love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. He didn't say more than.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't say at the expense of or instead of. And if you look at how he lived, he took time away from the crowds and even his closest disciples and went up alone to pray.
Interesting.
And so I think he is a model for caring for yourself too.
Wow.
And there were crowds that would come, searching for him. And he didn't always say, okay, here I am, and I will stay until I've healed every single person.
Wow. This is mind-blowing to me, Wendy. Because another thing that I learned from my grandmother, and this might be part of that toxic religious belief culture, was that if you've been blessed, and my family was tremendously blessed, it's your responsibility to be a blessing to others. So I took that in to mean that I had to keep on sacrificing always, and I ran the family business for pennies on the dollar. And then when I was involved in coaching, I just gave away my services and did talks for free. So help me out here. I'm still piecing this together.
In terms of doing things for free is still a struggle for me. I am very much having a hard time financially because I do want to help everyone.
Yes.
And I feel guilty charging for my spiritual support group, for example. I'm getting over that. For one thing, I realize I can't help anyone if I am homeless and starving, right?
Exactly.
Or just if I'm so stressed all the time about whether I'll be able to pay the rent,
yes,
that, the quality of my work suffers and my ability to, listen to others and empathize with their struggles is impaired because my mind is always on mine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And like you shared with your sister-in-law, because she gave and gave and gave until she had nothing left, she became
so angry
and her health suffered.
Yeah.
And there's so much evidence now in the mental health research and medical research that, our physical health is very much impacted by overgiving or basing our worth on meeting other people's needs at the expense of our own.
Yes. Yes, that makes so much sense. Could you talk more about your type of coaching and how you can help the people who are struggling with beliefs such as the ones that we spoke about?
Sure. Well, for one thing, I always emphasize that I'm not like this enlightened guru with all the answers that are right for everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So my role is to help them figure out what they actually believe versus, what they were raised to believe and think they have to believe. And then how they really want to live and what steps they can take to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I, like in my Zoom group, it's not just for Christians or former Christians. The last one, we had a pagan, we had a witch, we had an atheist. The whole point is that we all have some of the same inner struggles with believing that we're enough and that it's okay to love and trust ourselves and prioritize our needs, even if other people don't like that.
Yes.
And so people that are not Christian have some of the same struggles with being judged or condemned because they don't believe the right things or they don't express their spirituality in the right way or the only true way. And so I see my role as kind of the support person and the encourager as people come to their own answers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't give answers. I help people find their own.
Right.
And believe that their own answers are okay and they can trust their intuition even if others are telling them they can't.
Right. Okay. Is that the format of the May 4th Zoom group that you're doing?
It's a 6-week group.
Okay.
And the site, explains in detail what we cover each week. But yes, it's a discussion group that I facilitate. And so we talk, like 1 week is about spiritual places. And we each share, where we go, whether it's, out in nature or to a Bruce Springsteen concert or
yes.
wherever else, we encounter the divine or feel connected with it. 1 week is about spiritual objects. And so for some people, that's tarot cards.
Right.
Maybe it's a photograph of a loved one, astrology, whatever.
Right.
And we talk about spiritual experiences. Some people have spoken with or seen deceased loved ones, for example.
Right.
And they've been afraid to talk about that with other people. And that's just one example. I mean, we had people share things in the group last time that they said, I can't believe I felt safe sharing this. I haven't even told my closest friends or my family about this.
Wow.
And the rest of us in the group were like, yeah, something similar happened to me, and would share that. Or, that's really interesting. Tell me more about that. I'm curious. Not, shame or judgment or that's weird,
That's like finding an oasis right there.
Exactly.
That's beautiful.
My mission in life now, is to provide that oasis, because there are so few of them now. And places that used to be that oasis, some churches aren't anymore. Mm-hmm. At least for some people, they are not safe places to be honest about spiritual struggles or beliefs that don't, match other people's, etc.
Yes. When you decided to start your Substack, which is one of the most important, or which is a post that you would say, okay, this one gives my reader a really great understanding of the meaning and the reason why I created this?
Gosh, there are so many. I've been publishing weekly since 2022.
Oh my goodness!
And originally they were long form written posts, and now I'm doing more of the video posts and audio posts.
Yes.
But I share my story very vulnerably in almost every post or every live. Probably the most vulnerable one was Self-Love is a Never-Ending Journey.
Ooh.
And that was one of my very early ones. I don't remember which year, but I shared how when I was really depressed and I was in my therapist's office, I literally could not say out loud, even just to him, I am lovable. And that blew me away, because I had a previous therapy, and like I said, I thought my self-esteem was good until I lost my job and suddenly felt worthless and useless. Yes. And so I shared in that article kind of my process of journaling and just coming to believe that I am lovable, and the things I did. I created this image and used it as the lock screen image on my phone. So I saw it all the time. That was just a picture of me with hearts, and it said, I am lovable underneath it.
Wow.
And I've since changed it. Now I have a photo of me as a young child, and I have underneath it the words, my love will not let you down.
Oh, that's
which also
so
happens
good.
to be the title of a Bruce Springsteen song.
Ah!
And I do little things now, like have motivational stickers on my computer, and I write affirmations every night. And when I first started doing that, like even coming up with one thing I liked about myself was quite a struggle.
Right.
But now, I can fill a whole page with, I am honest.
Yes.
I am helping myself and others by sharing my story. I am creative. I am resourceful, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And that has helped so much. And I always used to hate affirmations, because the ones that were emphasized were things I never, like, if you believe it, you can achieve it.
Right.
And And of course, our mindset is very important, but it's not the only factor.
That's right.
I mean, who expected COVID?
Nobody.
You know, how many businesses went out of business? How many people lost their jobs?
Yes.
Not because they had a negative view of themselves or they didn't do a good job, but other circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, someone gets hit and killed by a drunk driver.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with their mindset.
No, it doesn't.
So I don't believe the whole law of attraction thing as an absolute law where whatever you think about happens, basically.
Right.
But at the same time, I do believe that overcoming our negative beliefs about ourselves and the world, and that people can't be trusted, that we're not worthy of love, is extremely important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about we're not a victim of our circumstances? Because that I've come to believe very strongly.
Yes. I think in some ways we have to start by seeing ourselves as that victim, because that's what enables us to fully feel the outrage and the grief and not blame ourselves, but blame the person who abused us or, you know, whatever happened. But then if we stay there, we'll suffer unnecessarily.
It's the butterfly, it's the caterpillar's journey. There's I'm not sure if the little tiny caterpillars beating up against the cocoon. It's not a gentle journey.
No, it's not. And the other thing is that when they first emerge, they can't immediately fly.
Of course not.
They have to pump fluid into their wings.
Wow.
And rest and prepare, and then they can fly away a few hours later.
Oh, boy.
And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in that too, that sometimes we have to cocoon ourselves away from the negative influences in our lives, and even people who love us and mean well. When I was depressed, loved ones would say things like, you know, you should be grateful. There are other people who have it so much worse than you do.
Oh.
And that's true.
Yes.
But not helpful.
No, it's not.
And someone who is in pain to say empty platitudes like, oh, everything happens for a reason, or you'll see this will turn out for the best, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just horrible.
Oh, it is.
And cruel.
It is. That's a really good question. So let's just go into that question. So someone who has someone in their life and they're going through that painful transformation where they're in the cocoon, they're beating their little insides and they're feeling like pulp, what can they say to help them, to hold space for them and say, I'm here for you, I love you? Because I pushed all my friends away during that time and my family. Not a good thing, but I did it.
Yeah, because I know when I was super depressed, I felt like my husband, who is wonderfully supportive and has always been my rock, didn't understand, because, you know, he still believed that there was hope and life would turn out okay.
Yes.
So it's hard. But the main thing I would say is that listening is more important than anything else. You don't have to say a word ever. You know, I needed hugs, which I got, and
me too.
Just unconditional love and a willingness to listen. And from other friends, I had one friend who called me every Thursday for that whole year, even though all I did was talk about how awful my life was and why I couldn't do anything to make it better, basically.
Wow.
And she didn't lecture me. She listened with compassion. And she did offer suggestions of small things, you know, but she didn't pressure me to do them or tell me I was bad if I didn't do them.
Right.
Because the thing with depression is, for me, I knew what I needed to do to feel better. To, you know, get outside, to journal, to all those things.
Yes.
But I wasn't capable of that. Just getting out of bed and getting dressed and brushing my teeth or taking a shower was not something I could do every day.
No,
at
no.
the worst.
I
of
agree.
My depression.
I agree. It's very, very hard.
So yeah, I think the worst things to say to someone who is depressed, or to anyone, whether they're grieving or have recently been raped or whatever, is upsetting them currently, is to say that everything will be okay, or that, look on the bright side, or you should be grateful. Other people have it so much worse.
He's
like
better
I have a
off.
sister who treats kids with cancers.
Mm-hmm.
And so she was one who said to me, look, I have parents whose kids are dying of cancer, and they are handling it better than you're handling your relatively minor stuff,
Wow.
And she didn't say it in that way.
No, I
She
understand.
wasn't trying
I
to be mean.
understand.
But nevertheless, that message, I already had plenty of shame of my own and thought I didn't have the right to be as upset as I was. And I still sometimes struggle with that, like in mental health support groups, when there are other people who were sexually abused as children, or physically abused, or have been through some other horrible experience that I haven't been.
Mm-hmm.
To believe that, my pain is still real, and I was still affected by, the things that happened to me, even though they weren't that extreme. And that's okay, and I have the right to my feelings. And also, just like them, I can move from the victim and the blaming mindset to the survivor mindset. Like, yes, that happened to me. Yes, that person was in the wrong, but I'm not going to let that continue to define me or be an excuse for why I can't get my life back and be happy.
Right. Would you categorize that when people say things that are not tactful, unkind, whatever? Would you consider that tough love? Because my family is big on tough love. And I really push back at that, coming from that abusive environment. To me, tough love is abuse. I just don't see a difference. I really don't.
I do not consider tough love abuse, but I also do not consider what you just said an example of tough love.
Okay.
To me, tough love is you have an alcoholic adult child.
Right.
And you refuse to bail them out of jail one more time.
Wow.
Or let them live free in your house.
Oh, wow. Big difference then. All right. Tough love on my end is more around verbal self-expression. It's really hurtful.
Yeah, I consider that abuse, not love.
Okay, well, that's what I'm used to. That's my husband's side. But that's important when people need to take that time to retreat and say, well, I need to work on healing here, and this is what I need from you. As you told your friend, like, please, reach out to me, or have that agreement with them.
Yeah, and the other thing is, like you said, when you're very depressed or grieving and just don't want to interact with anyone, either because you don't feel up to it or because you feel guilty, like you don't want to rain on their parade and ruin their good time.
Yes.
It's so helpful for people to keep asking anyway, even if you say no every time.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, that's a reminder that they do still care about me and want to be friends with me. And they're thinking about me, even if I'm saying every time, no, I'm not interested.
Wow.
They're still inviting me.
That's so right, because I have one friend, Dawn, who I've known her since college, and another, Lucy. And with Dawn, it doesn't matter how much time goes by when we don't speak. It could be 5 years, and she's like, hi, hon, how you doing? Just thinking about you. And the other one, I just feel like we're rebuilding a relationship each time, and it's become so exhausting to me that I've stopped trying, really. Unless there's some kind of family event. The last one was my sister-in-law's funeral. Then we just don't see each other because I don't feel that same love and connection that we used to have.
Yeah, my best friend from high school and I are like that. We can go months or even a year without talking at all or even texting.
Yes.
But yet when we do, we can talk for an hour and we're still completely connected emotionally.
Yes.
And there are others, my siblings, for example, some of them, we rarely speak at all, not because we're, mad and not speaking to each other, but just because our lives are so different and our beliefs are so different, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
Several of them are very conservative Christians, and so we cannot discuss politics or religion at all in my family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just on them. I'm just as convinced I'm right as they are that they're right.
Absolutely.
So we just don't talk about it.
Yes, true. What advice would you share with somebody who has been hurt in a situation, a toxic relationship, religious, a space where they felt safe, and now they're looking for another place? Maybe it's a meetup or a neighborhood spot, whatever it is. What can you share so that they can help to think about that and use that as a barometer? Like, is this safe for me, kind of thing? What questions should they ask?
Number one, trust your intuition.
Yes.
But one of my other articles about 3 questions to ask yourself before you believe anyone who claims to speak for God.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And so one question is, are you allowed to question them or express doubts?
Wow.
Because the Bible is full of people who directly question God or refuse to do what God told them to, that are still regarded as heroes of the faith now.
Okay.
Another one is, are you being challenged to act differently? In other words, are your prejudices being reinforced, or are you being told to love everyone or to reach out to that homeless person or whoever else that you would normally avoid and feel uncomfortable or unsafe around?
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, if they really are unsafe people, like they've abused you in the past, I'm not saying, go around them.
Sure.
And the third one is just, are these people, I don't remember for sure, but I would say it's, how do I feel in their presence? Do I feel spiritually nourished, or do I feel shamed or unwelcome, or like I have to pretend I'm fine and smile when people ask and say, I'm great, how are you?
Mm-hmm.
And never talk about my real life.
Yes.
And so there's a Walt Whitman quote I love that says, question everything you've been told at church, in school, wherever, and dismiss whatever insults your own soul.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
And also find other people who will love you, your whole authentic self,
mm-hmm.
and not try to change you or point out your shortcomings or whatever. Just people you can be yourself around and feel safe sharing anything.
Yes.
And like I said, that's exactly why I created my spiritual support group, and I limited to 12 people.
Okay.
Because I want to ensure safety, and it's live only. We don't record it, so it's not shared outside the group.
Okay.
And
when does that start again?
It starts on Sunday, May 4th. It's actually on Sunday mornings, because many people have left their church or never went to church, and so that can be a lonely time for people.
Yes.
And there's full details of what we do each week. The easiest link to remember is bit.ly/weary souls.
Okay.
And the last group appreciated it so much that when the 6 weeks were up, they said, can we pay extra and keep meeting? And they have.
Wow.
Because there are so few safe spaces now.
Yes.
to just be real and to talk about our spirituality, which I think everything is spiritual, frankly.
Yes.
And we can't separate our mental health from our spiritual health.
That's absolutely true.
And one of the most destructive messages of religion is that, there's spiritual and there's physical, and they're opposed to each other, and our bodies are bad. The desires of the flesh, are sinful versus this pure spiritual world. And, our bodies are just these containers that our souls live in, all of that. And it's just so important to counter that message and acknowledge that spiritual experiences happen all the time to anyone, anywhere. And there are all kinds of ways of connecting with the divine. And what works for you may not work for me, and that's fine.
It's true. It's true.
The other biggie I would add is, don't let anyone pressure you into forgiving someone. The key Christian teaching is that you have to forgive, right? So no matter how many times someone abuses you or whatever, you're supposed to forgive. And there's two problems with that. One, it gets twisted into you have to let them keep abusing you, which is total crap.
Oh my God, yes.
But the other one is that if you rush to forgive someone without ever acknowledging the depth of your pain and your anger, because you think you must forgive, and that becomes just pretending it wasn't that bad, or didn't hurt that much, or it was okay, that is just so destructive and harmful.
Yes.
And that's not what true forgiveness is about.
Yes.
You can forgive someone after they're dead, or you can forgive them and never speak to them again, or be in their presence.
Yes.
And if you don't ever forgive them at all, from my perspective, that's okay. There are people that I have not forgiven, and I look at it as I'm not ready to or capable of that right now.
Right.
And maybe God will work in me and enable me to at some point, but I'm not going to beat myself up because right now I'm not emotionally in that space where I can.
I had an interesting experience after being sexually abused as a kid. I didn't realize, I teach emotional freedom technique, which is a stress relief technique. And the reason why...
I use it too.
Amazing! So the reason why is because at one point I was going through a panic attack. I was in an NLP practitioner training, reminded of one of the worst memories of sexual abuse that not even 15 years of therapy was able to touch. And through the tapping that I learned that day, that made me realize I have to forgive George and his friends, because I didn't realize how I had been hurting myself. I had to just forgive or whatever, just cut the cords, clean them out, whatever, to stop acting as the victim. Poor Andrea, no power, nothing. So
and that's the key. You realized you were ready.
Oh,
you didn't
that's
let
right.
someone else tell you it's time. You have to.
That's right. Nobody told me. That's right. Actually, nobody told me to forgive him. That's interesting. Very interesting thought. Thank you. Yeah. So how can people get in touch with you, Wendy?
My Substack is Changing Lives.
Okay.
It's just wendygordon.substack.com, but it's Wendy with an I, W-E-N-D-I.
Okay.
Lots of ways. My LinkedIn profile, at the end, it's Wendy-Gordon. Through Substack, of course, people can send me DM requests. I will say, if you do, don't send a generic, hello, I liked your last post.
Right.
Because there are too many spammers doing that, and creepy people and fake accounts.
Yes.
So unless it's very specific, I'm not likely to accept the request or respond to it. And other times I don't, just because I'm too busy or I'm human, whatever.
Right. What I'll do is
one way.
I'll share all your links.
Okay, great.
Embedded in the post that will be part of this. Okay. Oh, this has been a gift. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a gift for me too. As I always tell people, I create the support groups that I need, and I write things that I need to remind myself of. And, teaching practices to other people or demonstrating them helps me remind myself to do them consistently and how much they really do help.
Yes, yes. Wow. Well,
and also I learn from other people.
Yes.
Like I said, in the last group we had a pagan, an atheist, a witch, and the spiritual practices they shared really fascinated me, and I could see the value of them. And we had some in common, like immersing ourselves in nature.
My best favorite. Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. I really love having you and having this incredible discussion. Which Bruce Springsteen song would mark this interview?
Like I said, my favorite one is Land of Hope and Dreams.
Okay.
And I think it is relevant to this. Another one would be Human Touch. There's one line in it that says, "You can't shut out the risk and the pain without losing the love that remains. Oh. We're all riders on this train."
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay. We'll close with that. Thank you.
Thank you.